Hey community, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, I'm Dr. Blaire, a doc in clinical psychology, and on this channel we discuss psychology, inspiration, social justice, and all topics in between. First things first, hit that subscribe button. I want to see you back next week. And of course, it is still Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to continue to keep this ball going. I have a special guest here with me who is near and dear to my heart today, and we will be discussing parenting, family, and mental health. So stay tuned. All right, everybody. So we have here none other Dr. Amber. She has a YouTube channel. Make sure you go and subscribe to her because she has a message specifically for Black women around affirmations. And she is also an illustrious educator at Adler University Chicago campus. And I'm so happy to have her here with me to discuss parenting and family systems. Now, Dr. Amber, you know, mental health, we have stigma.
Yes.
It's intense.
Unfortunately.
Literally, right? And so I want to talk about what does it look like in the family system around parenting? Like, what have you seen?
Unfortunately, there is a stigma, there's shame, and there's blame, right? Mm-hmm. There's fear, and that really is what's fueling the stigma. It's fear. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. It's that fear of being labeled as depressed or being labeled having anxiety or bipolar or whatever it may be, right? And so unfortunately, it's those labels that people are so afraid of. Mm-hmm. But honestly, mental health is so critically important, right? I mean, it's like if you had high blood pressure, you would take that medicine, right? If you had diabetes, you would take the medication.
What she said.
Right? Mm-hmm. So mental health, because your brain is like one of the most important systems in your body.
Yeah.
And so if you're having issues with the way that you think, right? Or your emotions, you're having some issues, it's so critically important to get that taken care of, to go see someone. Therapy is a great place to go to. And it's interesting because a lot of people think that therapy is Ian Lebanzan. That is not therapy.
I'm sorry, I almost just ran out of this chair.
That's not therapy.
It's not therapy.
And it really upsets me because people think that you're going to come to this room and someone's going to scream at you, and yell at you and get in your face. That's not what we do. We help you figure your stuff out. Mm-hmm. And my position is that as your therapist, I believe that you are the expert in the room on you. Right? You come into the room to tell me about you. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming alongside you to assist you in figuring your stuff out. So that's my role, to help you figure your stuff out.
I love that. That's a really good point. And I want to piggyback a little bit. You talked about the fear. Mm-hmm. That's crucial right there. So when people are afraid, sometimes it turns up looking like this in the family. You better not go tell our business. Mm-hmm. You're not crazy. We're not crazy over here. And so there's this muzzle that we end up putting on people out of fear that people will then look at you and or your family system a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, as you said, to use your words, it's holding people back from being able to be their full selves.
It absolutely is. And even more than that. So because a lot of times we look at the children, mm-hmm. right? But the children are a product of their household. And so it's so critically important that parents are as healthy as they possibly can. Because when parents are healthy, mm-hmm. then their children will be healthier. Yeah. And so that really frustrates me because I used to, back in the old days, I started a nonprofit organization with one of my friends. Mm-hmm. And we taught young people, and it was teenagers, digital multimedia. And it was interesting because when we got to see the parents, the families of the children, because we worked with the kids, and, mm-hmm. and our hearts were broken at some of the things that they would say and some of the things that they would do. But then when we saw the parents, we saw that the apple did not fall far from the tree, and the issues that they were having, they were being exacerbated in them from their parents. And so hurt people. We hear that all the time, but it is mm-hmm. so true. And so it's so important for parents to be healthy, to get well, because once they do that, that changes the trajectory of the entire family, right? Mm-hmm. So if the parents are well, if they're their best selves, right? If they're healthy, then their children will be healthier as well. And that's what I really try to impress upon people, to really, parents, you've got to be your best self. And this is counterintuitive. I know it's counterintuitive, mm-hmm. but parents, prioritize yourselves. I know that's a bad word, right? Put yourself first. That's a bad word.
Why should they do
because
that?
people are like, no, put the kids first, honey. Put your husband first. Put this first. No, my love. Just like when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant says, right, put the oxygen mask on your face first, on you first, before you can help someone. So how am I supposed to help you, right, my child? And I am exhausted and I am spent. If I have a bad attitude, if I haven't dealt with the trauma from my childhood, right, I'm just passing that on to you. So it's so critically important that you as the parent be your best self, so that you can be your best self for your child. And guess what? When you are taking care of yourself, when you're healthy, your child is learning that from watching you. They don't have to go out and find somebody else to see it. They're seeing it right from you. And that's what we need. We need healthy parents. And when parents are healthy, then they have healthier children.
Yeah, because it's a cyclical pattern.
It is.
We have this cycle that continues where behaviors are being passed down. Even I believe some conditions that people end up being diagnosed with is really just a learned behavior.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily down to the grain, but they learn to act and think in that way. And so you bring up a very good point in terms of knowing what your family history is and understanding how your family operates, and also understanding as a parent, you have the opportunity, the power to then move forward and change some things that you have seen before. And I believe that deep down, most parents, I'm not a parent, I know you are, but deep down, most parents really want the best for their children. They really put their best foot forward, and everybody makes mistakes. Not everyone is going to do that job perfectly. It's impossible, but this point around making sure that you take care of you so that it can be a them, that they have a fighting chance is huge. And so when you bring up changing this pattern and working on yourself and doing the work, let's break that down, because I think that when we say do the work, we get this general understanding, but we really understand how we can do that actively.
Right. You know, it's one thing that I would like to mention, and this is something that's really near and dear to my heart as an African American woman. And that's the sense of hopelessness that's in the Black community. Yeah. And Dr. Cornel West wrote a book, and it's entitled Race Matters. And in the book, he talks about the nihilistic threat. And the nihilistic threat is a sense of hopelessness that has pervaded the African American community, where it's like you don't even try to do any better. You know, you've drank the Kool-Aid, as I like to say, right? And you've taken in what society says you are, right? And so you feel like, well, I can't, so I'm not even going to try. The white man's not going to let me do this or that, so I'm not even going to try. So then you have this type of a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. And so after that, you know, they don't have to discriminate against you because you're not even going to apply yourself. You're not even going to apply. And so that's what I'm seeing in the African American community that is breaking my heart. And that's an area that I am looking to actually research. Because I would like to know just how do we break this cycle? Because that is such a negative place that a lot of African Americans are in. Not the entire African American community, but that is something that is plaguing our community that I'm working on.
Collectively. And you know, it actually makes me think now. I want you, everybody prepare, make sure you hold on to your seat. Does that mean we have quit? Like, did we give up? Have we thrown up our hands? Did we wave the white flag? Are we surrendering? Did we quit? And that's a harsh thought to have to think about. But in some ways, we did. Yeah. In some ways, I believe we have. And when we surrender to that big mountain that's in front of us that makes us feel like I can't get past it, and we sit down and we live life being content, that is a form of giving up. Right. In fact, if we think about a timeline, I always think about a timeline, and I think about history when I was in grammar school. I think about a timeline. If we're too far over on one end and we just stick there, that actually is a form of being stagnant. And when you're being stagnant, you're no longer having any movement. In fact, if you're stagnant and everything else is moving because life is dynamic, that means that you are now regressing. So if we are forgiven, we gave up, we quit, we're being stagnant, we're staying in one place, and we may be regressing because everything is moving forward. We're in the back. That's not helping. That's not helping with this, right?
That's an interesting point. You're standing still and everything is moving forward. So actually, you're not standing still. You're actually moving backwards because you're not moving forward. Absolutely. Yeah. That is an interesting point. And you know what else? There's something else that I was thinking about, and that is where, you know, I was thinking about back in the 60s and the 70s when I was a little girl, there was so much pride, right? There was so much Black pride. And now it seems as though a lot of our community, they want the Gucci belt with no money in the purse, right? I just saw someone on the bus stop with a Louis Vuitton belt I'm like, you can't afford a car, but you can afford this. It doesn't make
It's
sense to me,
backwards,
right?
yeah.
And that's some of what Dr. Cornell West was talking about. That you want the trappings, you want the look, the appearance of, but not to do the work to get those things, right? We want the easy, the quick buck. You know, we want what makes us feel good. And so it's important that we work, that we don't do that, right? That we don't continue to perpetuate this, and that we go back to what we used to do, which is self-pride, to work hard, right? Because now it's like working hard, nobody wants to work hard anymore, right? But it's so important that we instill that into our families and our children. And one of the things that you mentioned when you were talking about parenting, you know, a lot of the time we in society, we want to help, or we want to fix the kids and ignore the children. But these children, they are being raised in these homes, right, that are filled with trauma, right? These volatile environments,
yes.
right? And so if you want to help the children, you have to help the families. The families need help, right? The parents, they're working 2 or 3 jobs, barely making ends meet. They're stressing out. They're not even able to take care of their children the way that they want to. But then we're looking at, well, let's create some more programs for the kids. We want to do all these programs for these kids. But what about some help for these families, for the parents, so that they can be there for their children, right? So that they can support their children. We wouldn't need a book bag drive or a uniform drive, or we wouldn't need to serve dinner at the school, right? If we were able to provide or have better paying jobs for the parents, right? So if the parents could work one full-time job
consistently,
okay, get off from work, come home, cook the dinner, have enough money to buy some groceries, right? And be able to be there for their children, then we wouldn't have to have all these different programs. Because we're always looking at, let's create a program, let's create another program. But what about working in society to make sure that people have what they need, right?
You know, you're bringing up a great point around this abundance of social services that we see, specifically in low SES, socioeconomic status areas, communities. And so with those communities, there's this abundance of social services that come in, offer these free services, and give what is supposed to be a helping hand up and not out, but it actually ends up being a helping hand out. And so we're talking about how do we break that cycle? Like, what are the solutions to actually breaking away? Not necessarily that these programs are wrong. I've worked for many of these programs. I've helped develop some of these programs. We've done this work. We believe in it. But we are really wanting to then infiltrate the system, the pattern, the construct that still is living to this day, that actually, I'm going to have to say, probably started before the 70s.
Yeah, but I believe back then in the 70s, though, people were working to not have to use these services forever, right? But then to me, it seems like these services, we just keep increasing the services, instead of empowering people.
Yeah,
and that's not what we're doing. We're not empowering them so that I don't need to come to the food bank, right? I came here for 2 years. Now I've worked my way out, and now I don't need to come to the food bank for food. Now I'm coming to the food bank and I'm volunteering, right? I'm volunteering at the food bank. So that's what we need to do. And I think that, unfortunately, we're not doing that right now. We have all these programs that are handicapping people, to be honest.
Now, here's a twist on this. Is it that people are is it that the programs or those who are developing that, are we not empowering, or are people not feeling empowered?
Honestly, I think that it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I
think it's a little bit of both. I think that the way that the programs are set up, they're not really set up for you to get out of the program, for you to work your way and matriculate through, get the help that you need, and be on the other side of the program. The programs pretty much are just set so that they can help you. And that's it, to help you with your issue that's right now. But there's no forward thinking as far as, you know what, I need, you're not going to need this forever. We're going to help you get a better job. We're going to help you with job training. We're going to help you. We're going to help you. And that, I don't see that.
So what we're talking about here is actually looking at the system that is broken. We have all of these programs and systems that are not necessarily moving and shifting with people, because people are dynamic. We change every day. And we just used an example earlier about when things stay stagnant, when they don't move, it actually starts to regress. And so I wonder, in terms of a lot of work that I do a lot of organizational consultation. And so I want to come in and look at the program. Is it still doing what it's supposed to be doing? And that I actually think will help us around people being empowered by the thing that is designed to empower them. And so it is actually not just a shift in thought for the people and a shift in thought for the organization.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting because if you look at an organization, right, and you see that they've been helping this family for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and now they're helping the children of the family and then their families, et cetera. That's not the goal, right? The goal is for that family to not need the help anymore,
Exactly.
right? And so that's what I mean when I say that it's perpetual need, the perpetual space that they stay in this lower socioeconomic status. And it's interesting because I was thinking while you were talking though, I was thinking about how we pass on these transgenerational traumas.
Yes.
Because we think that, you know, we're not going to talk about it. So you're not going to talk about the sexual abuse. We're not going to talk about the incest. We're not going to talk about what has happened to me. I'm not going to talk about it. So then it actually happens to my child, and then it happens to their child because nobody wants to talk about it.
Yes.
And so we're not healing from our traumas. We're passing them on, and that needs to stop.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how can you pass it on?
And how it stops actually is by talking about it. Right? Let's stop the silence, because when we keep things in silence, that's how these secrets get passed on, right? These things continue to happen because if we talk about it, no, I was sexually assaulted, or no, uncle whoever or aunt whoever, she touched me. And so when we talk about it, when we bring that to the light, because of course it can't, once you bring something to the light, then it's no longer hidden.
Yeah,
right?
and this is not to negate the fact that it is a challenge to actually open your mouth and say these things. Because when you experience something like this, it of course, there are many emotions and psychological shifts and changes, and also changes in behavior that you can experience. And so this is not to minimize the challenge that happens when you are unable to speak, but instead to empower you, because we want you to see the freedoms and the benefits that come with actually speaking up, because it's a healing for you and it's the healing for the future generation.
And that's why it's so important for parents really to go and get some help, right? So if you know that you're struggling with something, if you've had something like this happen to you in your childhood, because a lot of times we'll have these things happen in our childhood and we'll kind of push them down. They may be repressed, right? But we need to really get them out. We need to talk about it. And so that's why a therapist is so critically important, so that someone can come alongside you and help you work through those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so outside of therapy, what do you think are some obtainable solutions? Not everybody has insurance.
Right.
Not everyone actually has access to therapists. We talk about the differences between accessing services versus accessed services.
Right.
You may have services around you, but are you actually accessing them? What are the barriers that you are running up against? And sometimes insurance is a big, huge one, because you're like, I want to go see Dr. Amber, but my insurance is fighting with her. Like things like that come up. Let's be real.
That's real. And one of the things that I really recommend, and I don't know how we can get this instituted, but this is something that I really want. I really feel like parents should be required to have parenting training. Right. It's so critically important that parents have parenting training. And I really believe that with my whole heart, that parenting training, so that you can learn how to better parent your child, right? Because every child can't be parented the same way. Every child does not need the same thing. But it's so important that you get to understand what is required, what's needed. And there are a few things that I feel that parents really need to have. Number one, they need to prioritize themselves, which I mentioned before, which I know is counterintuitive. But you really, as a parent, you need to be healthy. Physically, spiritually, mentally, you need to be as healthy as you possibly can. And then also, as a parent, you really need to create your family culture. And what I mean by that, what are your family standards, right? What are your standards? And then help to build that into your children. And another thing too, and this is a story that I tell all the time, which has to do with my son, Wani. So one thing that really bothers me with parents is that parents like to solve their children's problems. Their child has a problem or issue, they're running to their rescue. But then if you do that, your child never figures out how to solve their own issues. So what happened is, and I tell this story all the time, where my son, he was really a great kid, always a great kid, never any trouble. And actually, people looked at him like little Barack Obama. Really, he was really that kind of kid, right? Everybody loved him. And so I think he was in the 5th grade, and his friends decided that they were going to steal some candy from the teacher, because she had like a box of, some candy where you could earn these bucks, and then you could go and you can buy candy with the bucks that you would earn. Well, of course, he had his own bucks, right? But one of his friends wanted to steal this candy. So he's the lookout for the candy caper, right? And so they got caught. And he says it wasn't his fault, but they got caught. And so what happened was, and even though he wasn't even trying to get any of the candy. And guess how he got caught?
How did he get caught?
Because one of the other friends was mad because when they stole the candy, they wouldn't give him any of the candy. So of course he told, right? Okay, so my son, who is the lookout for the candy caper, and he didn't get any candy, but what he did was, we felt like, okay, you know what? Even though you didn't steal the car, but you were in the car, you didn't rob the bank, but you were in the car, you will go to jail too. So his father and I took off from work, went up to the school, met with the teacher, he apologized, he wrote a letter, he was going to pay for the candy, but she refused to allow him to pay for the candy. But I was like, no, because you are going to deal with this issue. You're going to solve this issue yourself. And then there's another example that I like to give, and this is, we went up to the school, and this is my son again, even though I have 2 children.
He keep getting in trouble.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, this is what happened. So he was in school, and he got in trouble. The teacher mentioned to us, when you go up there for a student-teacher. Anyway, so he got in trouble because he was talking, and the teacher told us that he was talking. And I looked at him, I'm like, just like you ignore me at home when I'm calling your name, you better ignore these kids, because what happens is they don't see the person that first talked to you. They see the person that responds, right? And so I told him, I said, let that happen again. And guess what? It didn't happen again. But my sister...
Did you hear the authority in her voice?
But my sister-in-law was like, no, you know how they label black boys? You need to go to that teacher and tell that teacher to move his seat. And they need to do this and they need to... I said, no. He has self-control. And he will learn how to not talk. And that's what he did. I'm not going to... And see, that's what we do. We try to solve the problem. No, I'm not going to have my... No. Nobody was bullying him. Nobody was hitting him. No, he can sit there and ignore that kid just like he ignores me when I'm calling his name at home and he's acting like he doesn't hear me. He can do that at the schoolhouse. And
he
that's
could
exactly,
do that at the schoolhouse.
And that's exactly what he did.
It worked.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Parenting, setting standards and requirements and then requiring it. And it requires follow through. Oh my God. And it's hard work,
Consistency.
right? It's hard work. And then I was thinking about also how today is not like it was when I was growing up, but even when I was raising my children, because, they're adults now. So they didn't have social media. Social media, oh my God.
It changed the world.
It's painful.
It has changed the world.
And I was just thinking about, I have clients who are 15, 16, 17 years old, absolutely beautiful young ladies, beautiful inside and out, and they hate themselves. They see themselves as ugly. And when I ask them, well, what do you like about yourself? Nothing. I mean, they name, I hate my eyes, I hate my eyebrows, I hate my lips, I hate my teeth, I hate my nose, I hate my hair, I hate my hairline, I hate my arms, they're too skinny, they're too fat, they hate everything. And it's because of this social media. And one of my clients, she's on social media, even though she's in school, she's on social media like 8 hours a day, looking at TikTok and looking at Instagram and looking at these women or young girls who have these filters and they photoshopped it or whatever to the point where they look flawless. And then you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I don't look like that, So
what can parents do with that, though?
So what I say to parents really is err on the side of caution, right? I would say don't allow them to be on it so much. Or I would say, especially not at 10, 11, 12, 13, because they start so early, right?
Does.
And another thing that I often say is that, a child is like wet concrete. And you know how when you're in wet concrete, back in the day, you would go in, you would put your hand in the wet concrete, you put your footprint in the wet concrete, you would write your name in the wet concrete, right?
I love that.
And once it dries, it's there.
That's so good.
And so we have to be so careful not to let just anybody put their handprint in our kids, in our wet concrete. creep,
You
right?
just said something.
I mean, that
Wow.
is
I
so
love
critically
it.
important.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
so we have to be careful and err on the side of caution. Our kids cannot go everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids cannot watch everything, right? Because they're feeding their souls.
exposure.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
It's
I mean, can
exposure.
you imagine you're sitting there playing a game where you're shooting and killing people, blowing people's heads off all day.
It impacts
and then,
you.
And then you're listening to music. Kill this person. Do
Mm-hmm.
this, do that. If you're feeding yourself that,
Absolutely.
right? And if you continue to feed that, that's what you want. And then you get desensitized to it. So then when you see on the news, this person got killed, that's no big deal because you're desensitized to it. And that is what's happening so much.
All right, so the message to the family and the families and parents out there is you have to look closely at not only what you're exposing children to, but also the exposure to yourself. Make sure you're taken care of so you can take care of them.
Absolutely.
But I need the people to know how they can get in contact with you. We've already talked about your YouTube channel, go subscribe. But also, how else can they stay in connection with you?
Well, you can reach out to me at dr.ambertherapy at gmail.com, and you can also reach me at Real Parents, Real Kids on Instagram.
And I will be sure that all of this information is in the description box. I am so happy that you came on today. We're going to have you back because we're just getting started. We are just getting started, y'all. We know that there's so much more to unpack here, but we want to make sure that we are doing our part. We take stepping stones. We can't do it all at once, okay? One thing at a time.
Absolutely.
So go make sure you listen to this fully. If you need to listen to it again, go ahead and do that. And I want to thank you once again for coming on.
It was my pleasure.
Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure that you are sharing with someone else if you felt like this was helpful. And of course, remember, if I'm great and you're great, then we're a great community.